Audio should be working. Can you hear me? Cool. So just working on a Ethereum and React app right now. I'm probably like halfway through it. I haven't done any styling yet. The idea behind the app is to essentially crowdfunding, like Kickstarter, and it's all using Ethereum contracts to handle the money and whatnot. So right now you have the ability to open a campaign. The campaign is like a crowdfunding campaign, so in theory people send you money and you build a product or whatever it is, and that's pretty much it. The kind of twist on this platform of what's happening here, we can look at the code for the contract. So this is the actual Solidity contract, or like the Ethereum contract. So this is what actually handles the money. When someone makes a crowdfunding contract, they are making an instance of this crowdfunding contract thing right here. You can think of this contract as being like a class, just like with JavaScript has classes, or Java or Ruby. You can really just think of it as a class. So whenever someone creates a new campaign, they are essentially creating an instance of this crowdfunding contract. The reason that this whole app right here is kind of interesting is that if you think about a lot of crowdfunding campaigns out there, if you think about a lot of the crowdfunding campaigns, a lot of them end up in misery, essentially, because people run off with money or whatnot, or they spend money really irresponsibly, and so they never actually complete a product. So the idea behind this crowdfunding contract is that once you donate money, once you contribute money, is what I'm calling it here, you get added onto a list of approvers. So once you donate money, you are essentially marked as a approver for this crowdfunding campaign. Then whenever the owner, so the person who originally made the contract, the person who is running the campaign, whenever they want to make use of this money, whenever they want to spend it, in some fashion, they have to create what's called a request. So here's where we create a request right here. And the request essentially says, hey, I want to spend some of the money that has been donated to the campaign. Here's how much I want to spend. Here's the purpose of why we're spending this money. And then here's where I'm trying to send the money to. Now, when they try to create this request, that doesn't send any money. It doesn't actually like disperse or distribute any money. First, all the contributors, or all the people who have donated money to the project, have to essentially view and approve the request. So that's the purpose of this right here. Once at least 50% of all the contributors to the project have approved the request, only then can the campaign owner then finalize the request and actually like disperse the money. So the entire intent here is that there's some actual like, I don't know, some actual, what's the word for it? People can't just spend the money that is donated to the crowdfunding campaign. Essentially, they have to like say, hey, here's why I'm spending the money. And if the contributors think like, no, you're trying to use our money in a bad way, well, then they don't get to spend the money. So it's kind of building in some level of trust to crowdfunding. So I think it's kind of interesting. And like I said, it's about halfway complete right now in terms of like base functionality. This is going to go towards a course that I'm hoping to release in January or so. So if this app sounds at all interesting, hey, good news, you get to like, I'll show you how to build it from scratch. So right now I'm just kind of building out the base app myself, and then I'll go back and record how everything works and whatnot. But for today, if anyone's curious about what's going on here, what I'm working on, some of the Ethereum stuff, just let me know in chat and I'll do my best to answer. Casey, the full stack course, Google Auth, yes, I know. I doubt you're dumb. If you got as far as Google Auth, I guarantee you are not dumb. I guarantee you, Casey, you are a very intelligent programmer to get that far. If there's something you think I could help out with quickly right now, just let me know and I could do my best to help you out. If there's like a distinct thing that went wrong, if you want to let me know what it was and maybe like push your code up to GitHub, I could take a look at it right now if you'd like. Just let me know. All right. Anyways, back to this. I'm gonna start to focus a little bit on the Ethereum stuff. So this is where you create a new campaign. There is a minimum contribution. So you have to spend like some amount of money to actually make the thing happen. It does look like there's a little bit of an issue with creating a contract right now. One thing that is really awkward around Ethereum is sometimes the tooling is really not quite there, so sometimes things just don't really work the way you expect, which is unfortunate. And when I say work the way you expect, I really mean like doesn't work at all. Okay, so there you go. Like I just refreshed the page and now everything's working. So this is MetaMask right here. This is how I actually spend Ethereum. I'm connected to my local test network, so I'm not actually spending real Ethereum here. But in theory, I would be if I was connected to a real network. So then this is the crowdfunding campaign that was just created. This is the address of the owner. So this is the person who is running campaign. And we're printing out the number of contributors, so the number of people who have donated money, and the amount of Ether coins that have actually been pledged to the campaign itself. And then we're given some UI here to actually contribute some money. So if I wanted to, I could then contribute like 10 Ether. So I'll contribute. That pops open MetaMask again, confirming that I want to actually spend some Ether. And yeah, I'll spend money. So then I submit. And it looks like we're having a little bit of an issue here in getting, maybe I broke that yesterday, I forget. But if I refresh, I should see 1 contributor and 10 Ethers pledged. So let's see what happens. Yeah, okay, there we go. So now 1 person has donated and they've donated 10 Ethers. I had that automatically updating yesterday, but it appears like it's not right now. So I think I'll start off this morning by fixing that. I probably want to do contract show. So this is the component that actually shows the contract on the screen. Yeah, so it should have been doing the actual, this dot load contract right here is where I reload contract details after someone donates some amount of Ether. So that should be working. Perhaps it is not. Yeah, it looks like it's just not working right now. Okay. So we'll do a little bit of debugging. So we'll send some more Ether. Contribution complete, so it is sending it and we're getting like notification, but it appears that when we call load contract right here, it's not actually like reloading the instance. Load contract. Again, if anyone's curious about any of this Ethereum stuff, just pop up in chat. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm gonna continue on. All right, so that's definitely like printing it out. Philippe, so e-commerce course with React and Node. I have discussed with another instructor on the platform about doing a course like that, like collaboration, and would have like a C# backend, .NET backend. If I do an e-commerce course, it'll probably take the form of that. So it would be like building an entire e-commerce platform from scratch with a .NET backend and a React front end for the actual interface. In general, I don't really want to do an e-commerce course that much because, to be honest, I think that although e-commerce is a good learning opportunity, there's a lot you can learn about it. I think that at the end of the day, I kind of feel like it'd be a little bit dishonest. I don't know if dishonest is the right word, but I feel like I'd be steering you in the wrong direction to say, oh yeah, let's create an e-commerce platform with React, and that's the right way to do things. Like, you know, realistically, if you want to build some e-commerce page, I want to point you to like Gumroad, you know, something like this. Gumroad lets you set up your own store for e-commerce stuff, and it's a lot easier than building a React app from scratch. So if you're serious about building e-commerce, you know, I want to point you to something like this right here as opposed to building a React application. Because if you're wanting to set up something around e-commerce, like I want you to focus on selling your product, you know, and not actually building the app to sell it. I think that's what the focus should be. Alexander, so front end is React and the back end is the test network. Yes, you are correct. That's exactly correct. So the front end, I've been wanting to kind of like put together a diagram lately to kind of start to map out how these things work together. Maybe I'll put one together right now really quickly. I don't want to do that. I want to not using GitHub. Yeah, we'll do this. Okay, so if I was going to diagram exactly how this Ethereum app is working right now, it would be maybe something like this. We've got like React up here on top. React is running inside the browser. React is communicating through a plugin called, or not a plugin per se, but a library called web3.js. Maybe it'd be most accurate to put like, I think probably like this right here. Yeah, I think this is probably right. And then we've got test network, Truffle. Yeah, actually, I think that's probably it. That's probably it right there. So this is kind of the architecture that's going on right now inside this application. Let me connect these arrows, and we'll zoom in. So I'm building out the React application right now, which is the view layer. The React app stores like absolutely no information. The React app is just about presenting information on the screen, and it has relatively little business logic inside of it. Almost none. Almost no business logic at all. The React app is making use of a library called web3.js. Web3.js is intended for kind of bridging the gap between a browser-based application, so like my React app, and communicating with an actual Ethereum network, which is down here. This is my test network, which I'm running using Truffle. And Truffle is all about helping you write Ethereum contracts and whatnot. React app is also communicating through the MetaMask extension. So this is MetaMask right here. You can think of MetaMask as essentially being like your the consumer portal to Ethereum. So when I say consumer, I'm saying like a person who would be making use of your product that you're building with Ethereum. So a layperson, someone who is like online using your product, they would have MetaMask installed. They would have some account linked to their MetaMask extension, and that would contain some amount of Ethereum. Then anytime that your React application wants to say like, hey, please pay money here, you know, send me some money or do something with Ethereum coins, that's going to prompt MetaMask to pop open essentially a like a confirmation window or like an approval window. The user then has to like approve the transaction with MetaMask, and then MetaMask notifies the test network and says, hey, this user just approved some transaction, go and send it off now, or like actually process the transaction. So the React application is essentially touching both these. This diagram right here is a little bit misleading because MetaMask actually uses Web3.js as well. So maybe a better diagram or a more appropriate one, if I was gonna reshape this, it might look a little bit like this. Let's do here. Blump. Okay, so this is probably a more accurate diagram, I would say. So technically, React is communicating with MetaMask to get like user approval for transactions, but then the React app also works directly with Web3 to pull information from the network. So Web3 is the portal to the network. MetaMask is like the user's ability, represents the user's ability to like initiate transactions, I suppose. And then the test network is like my local test Ethereum blockchain. Because the MetaMask credentials are being utilized by Web3, yeah, you got it, exactly. You got it. I've also been using the Solidity browser IDE over here as well. So you can see I've got my contract loaded up over here, and I use this a lot for the debugger and running and just testing the contract too. I started off using Truffle a whole bunch to test my contract with the like built-in test runner. But you know, the more that I use Truffle, the more that I'm not incredibly happy with it. I'm going to continue to use it to work with contracts and to compile contracts, but I don't know. Truffle is a definite work in progress right now, I think. There are some real rough edges around it that make using it a little bit more difficult, I think. And I run into them like on an hourly basis. Especially yesterday, I ran into several issues with Truffle just because Truffle wasn't quite behaving the way I expected, I guess would be the polite way of saying that. All right, anyways, so back to the application. So right now, a user can create a contract. They can pledge ethers or like donate money to the campaign. I have the ability to create a request. So here's the request creation right here. So we can add the description, where we want to send the money to, and how much we want to send. But right now I don't have the ability to actually display all the requests to contributors so they can actually approve them. So that's what I'm going to work on right now. I also changed the process of creating a request yesterday a little bit, so it's no longer required for you to enter in the ID of the request, so I think I'll take care of that right now as well. So request new is where I create a new request. So we'll delete the idea of an ID. So now when we attempt to create a request, we're only passing in the description, the amount of money that we're trying to send in, and the recipient. So the recipient is who is trying to like actually take the money here. So let's try testing this out really quick. I also need to clean up that div in the form. Okay, so I need money. It's my description. I guess that's good enough. I need a address to send the money to, so I'm going to use this address right here. And then my value as ether, I'm going to like create a request for 1 coin. Okay, so that just created a request successfully. So now I need to somehow get those requests displayed on the screen. So over here on contracts show, this would be a good place to put it. I think I'll place a new component in here called request list. So this will be a new React component, and its purpose will be to show a list of all the different contracts, or excuse me, requests that have been issued. So I need to also load up all the requests that I actually have. So I'm going to nest the request list inside of contract show. So in here I'll import request list from request list. And then in here inside the render method, place that component. I think we'll just show it down at the bottom. And I need to pass in the contract instance to this thing. So the contract that we care about here is this .state.contract, like so. And I kind of don't want to render this thing until we actually have a contract, so maybe I'll make another helper method. I kind of don't want to that much. Render contract. We'll just nest it in here for right now, because then we won't show the component until we actually have the contract available. All right, that should be better. Okay, and then over here, I never actually saved it. That should be better. And it looks like we still got an error. I think I have a broken import statement somewhere. Request list. Request list. Contract. That looks okay to me. Something is definitely funny here. Let's check out the log again. In contract show, check your code at contract show. Yeah, I believe it. This dot render, did I make a typo somewhere? I must have made a typo. Oh, inside of request list was over here. Well, it's working now, so I must have made, I think you call it request list. Gotcha. I see what you're saying. Yeah, my mistake then. When I start doing live stream, I start making silly mistakes because, thank you, Alex. Yeah, I start making silly mistakes because I'm super conscious of people watching me. I need to just relax a bit, I think. So I've now got access to the contract inside of request list over here. So I need to pull out the different requests that have been added and display them on the screen. So we'll do a component did mount, and inside of here we're going to essentially query the contract and figure out all the different requests that have been made. So right now we have one request that has been created inside of the contract, the one that I've created right here. So I want to essentially just pull out that request. Now the issue with that, and this is kind of a real rough edge around Solidity. So if I go and look at my contract right now, so here's crowdfund. So my requests exist inside of, yeah, this right here, requests. This is an array of requests, and a request is essentially, it's a struct. You can think of it as being like an object, JavaScript object or something. The issue that you run into very quickly with Solidity is you can't actually return a dynamically sized array, believe it or not. No support for it right now. So I cannot ask for just a big list of all the requests that have been issued. Can't do it. So instead, I have to ask for all my different requests one at a time. So I need to essentially, you can kind of imagine I need to essentially iterate through the list of requests. I have a method here called getRequestCount. This will tell me the number of requests I have. So I'm going to first get the number of requests, and then I'm going to ask for each of those one at a time. And this is all because I can't ask for a simple big array out of Solidity contract, which is a little bit awkward, but that's just the way it goes. So we're going to do an asynchronous component did mount right here, and we're going to do a lot of requests over to our contract. The first thing we have to do is get our request count. So we'll look at this dot props.contract.getRequest, what do we call this? Get request count. Await. Like so. And then for each of these, or for basically 0 to 1 minus request count, we want to try to get at the all the different requests. I don't really like using for loops these days for iteration. Let's just display the first request. Let's just hard code it for right now. So we'll do state the requests will be an empty array, and we will set state something like that, and then I need to create the actual request, or I need to fetch it to be exact. And we'll just right now hard code the first request. So we'll see how this goes. And then we will render requests. All right, let's give this a shot and see how we're doing. Typo, this.props.contract. That's fine. I saved it at a bad point. Yeah, okay, this is better. So it doesn't, okay, so this is something that's gonna be kind of interesting, but I'll come back to this in just a second because we have a whole bunch of questions here. RPlay, algorithms and data structures. Yeah, that was a joy to put together. I really like doing that course. You know I spent a lot of time in the algorithms and data structures course talking about interviews and how, you know, I'm kind of disillusioned with them. Coding interviews in particular. I think that whiteboard coding interviews are incredibly ineffective at evaluating candidates. I think that bar none, the most effective way is to write code in a pair programming environment, because that really simulates what it's like to work with a given candidate. The problem is that for whatever reason people don't like doing that. You know, I think whiteboarding interviews are kind of like a hazing process that get repeated all the time just because, you know, if you get hired at a company and they interviewed you with a whiteboard type interview, you know, with algorithms and data structures, I think that the assumption is that you are then going to turn around and interview candidates yourself in that same style. So I think it's something that just kind of, I don't know, perpetuates itself. Unfortunate, but it's just the way it goes. So I put that course together to kind of combat that whole really intimidating atmosphere of interviews or whiteboard interviews with algorithms. And I hope that, you know, I hope it's useful when you go to your own interview. Casey, have I ever had the error unexpected token in bundle.js? Yeah. So you put a greater than sign. You put down in the message you just posted, Casey, you said unexpected token greater than. I suspect you might have seen a message that said unexpected token less than error. I think that might have been what you saw. If you saw an error like that, that usually means that you've got a error in your Webpack or Babel setup. Specifically, it means that you are not correctly parsing JSX, basically. So it usually is it usually means that there's something wrong with either Babel or Webpack on your boilerplate. Casey, if you got that error message while you're using my Redux Simple Starter package, usually it means that you might have like dragged and dropped all the project files. When you do that, when you like drag and drop project files, you will lose out on a dot file called .babelrc. So if I were to now, so you see this like .babelrc file right here. If you're on OS X, this dot file right here is like a hidden file, and you won't see it pop up in your file browser. So I can actually show you that in practice right now. Okay, so here we go. So Casey, right now I'm inside of my Kickstart directory. Here's the client folder, here's the server folder. In my code editor, you can plainly see there's a .babelrc and a .getignore. But inside my file browser over here, those do not pop up. So if I now dragged and dropped these two folders to another location, I would be leaving behind the babelrc and the .getignore. And so the error message that you have, Casey, is oftentimes a symptom of losing out, or like losing essentially this .babelrc file. And that usually occurs because you are dragging and dropping project files. But that's not the only reason. Spade, question about no constructor. I assume you're talking about the request list component right here. So in React, we really only make use of the constructor. We want to initialize state, but part of the ES 2017, or maybe it was ES 2016 spec was instance level class properties. So that's what I'm doing right here. This is completely equivalent to defining state inside of a constructor. And in fact, you can very easily confirm this inside of the Babel REPL. So if we go over to Babel.js and pop open the REPL, And I think I might still have an example inside the REPL. We might not even have to, yeah, great, here it is right here. Let's turn on the preset. Okay, so Spade, you can just ignore the error message down here, but you'll see two examples of code right here where I've created two separate classes and then created state in both of them. So these two right here, 100% equivalent. Same exact thing, no difference between the two. I would love to get this error message to go away. I forget which preset it is. Did I like make a bad typo in here? I know it says specifically missing class properties transform. We'll just ignore it, but basically if the REPL was cooperating right now, the output that you would see would be something like, well, I can't actually type over here, but these two ways of initializing state, just take my word for it, completely identical. No difference whatsoever. All right, so let's get back over to our code. Still another couple questions really quick. FinTech, I did not leave out Big O inside the algorithm course, FinTech. I cover Big O like halfway through, right before the data structure section. I didn't cover Big O right away just because, you know, what I really expect for the algorithm course was that people who are like just starting to get prepared for interviews would be taking that course. And my goal was to, above all with that course, above all, the biggest thing I wanted to make sure inside that course was to make sure that people were not going to get really discouraged when they start looking at the interview questions. So FinTech, the first, I don't know, third or quarter of the course is all about just solving some relatively straightforward questions to really just kind of boost your confidence and make you realize, yes, you can do this, you can solve these questions, you just need practice, that's all. And I really very strongly felt that if I just brought up the topic of Big O from like lesson number 1, yes, maybe in the long run that would have been really helpful. You know, maybe more people would have learned more about Big O if I was really consistent and spoke about runtime complexity throughout the course. However, again, like the goal was to really just make sure that people could gently ease in and not get really discouraged right from the beginning of like, oh my gosh, runtime complexity, what is this? How do I estimate it? All that kind of crazy stuff. And so that's why I kind of deferred runtime complexity to like halfway through the course. If you got that far, then I felt like, okay, you can probably stick with this and understand runtime complexity. Philippe, question for the backend part of submitting a form, React form, would you recommend if it's the only part of the app that needs a backend? Philippe, I'm not sure I understand your question. Philippe, are you asking like what backend is appropriate? Let me know. Let me know. And then let's see. Okay, man, we got a lot of chat today. I did a stream yesterday, and we didn't have as much. Did not have as much chat yesterday. I'm like behind on chat here because I see you guys are telling me I probably made a mistake in the Babel REPL, so I need to watch chat a little bit more closely. All right. Am I going to create an Ethereum with React course? Yes, and that's what this is right here. I'm not entirely sure, and this is actually something I would love to hear about from all of you. I am going to do an Ethereum course. The focus of it is supposed to be Ethereum. So I am kind of throwing in React because I think it's the most realistic way of putting together a Ethereum application, like a real application. I think React is a great fit with Ethereum. However, in the context of a course, I'm a little bit afraid of meshing together React and Ethereum because if you want to learn about Ethereum, well, you won't want to take this course because this course is going to kind of assume you know about React. So I don't know. Alexander requests 0 right here. So I mentioned just a moment ago with Solidity, whenever we have an array. So request right here on the contract, this is an array. We cannot get access, we can't essentially return the entire an entire dynamic array from a contract. And so I specifically am calling @0 right here as a function because this is the only way that we can essentially work with a dynamic array coming from Solidity. I can only ask for one element at a time. So request right here is a function. It is not the actual array. So I'm calling this function asking for element at 0. And yeah, that's a little bit misleading. This code right here isn't working, so I'm still doing something incorrectly, but I'll figure out what that is in just a second. Let's do just a little bit more chat. Philippe, what would I recommend as easy solution for the backend part of submitting a React form? Knowing that it's the, oh, I see. The only part that needs a backend. Philippe, tell me a little bit more about what the purpose of the application is. You know, are you doing like a simple email collection thing, or you know, tell me what it's about. Does it need like validation? Just let me know, and I could give you a better opinion. Okay, so back to this contract at request thing. Let's see why it's not working. I think I do have a typo though. It should be no contract request. That looks good. The state. There we go. No, that's correct. I think that something just didn't load up correctly. This props contract requests. Let's try this out again. Simple website with the contact form. Philippe, if you're doing that, I might recommend you check out AppSumo. Philippe, if you like really want to do that manually, really just do an Express backend. But you can check out AppSumo. They've got a bunch of tools to make it really easy to do simple contact forms and whatnot. It's kind of hard to navigate AppSumo. Like right now, if you go to appsumo.com, they kick you over to this website auditor thing. I don't know, maybe I'm at the wrong site, but basically, I kind of recommend you might look at a solution already made out there for putting together a quick contact form, because it'll save you a little bit of time, and usually they are completely free, which is nice. Okay. So it looks like that error went away, so it was a just temporary issue, but now I've got a VM exception while executing an eth call right here. So what that means is that when I tried to actually access a request here, something went very, very wrong with it. Let's see if we got as far as the blockchain. Nope, I don't think we got over here. So something definitely went wrong with the contract itself. I think I'm going to test out the contract inside the browser IDE over here. So let's refresh this really quick. Oh, Spade, how I'm binding class functions. I'm not binding many functions right now. The only functions I have to bind are callbacks in all these different components, and right now the only callbacks that I have are for form submittals. So here's an example one right here, Spade, on submit. So this is a function that gets called whenever a form that exists inside this component gets submitted. But what I personally usually do for binding of functions, I usually bind them when I pass them off to a particular component or to a particular tag. So here's the form tag right here. Here's onSubmit. Here's the onSubmit function that exists inside this class. And so I usually bind it here. There's a lot of discussion online about how when you do this, you're rebinding the function every single time that the component gets rendered. My personal belief is that it is an incredibly negligible performance penalty. So I don't care about the fact that I'm rebinding it every time. That's super just not very relevant for me. Just my opinion anyways. All right, so we're gonna figure out what's going on with this contract, specifically the fact that I can't seem to actually pull out any requests from it. I don't want that. I want this. Let's kill that. All right, so this is a tool that I think you're all gonna love a lot. This is an IDE for working with a Solidity contract. So here's the contract code up here. Here's a console of essentially what's happening when I work with it. And on the right-hand side is essentially some elements that I can use to interact with the contract itself. So up at the top, I've got some configuration about how what account I'm essentially working with. You know, these are Ethereum accounts that are listed right here. Right now I'm working with an account that has 99 test ethers assigned to it. Of course, this is not real money. This is all fake money. And then right here, I've deployed a contract, and this is my essentially API to work with it. And so these are all functions that are defined within the contract, and so I can click on these to essentially execute the function. So if I click owner right here, it tells me the owner address. In this case, it's CA35. And so if I look up here, this was the account that deployed the contract, and you'll notice that it is CA35. So what I'm trying to do right now is debug the ability to fetch requests. So we're going to create a request right now. I need a description. I need a, what's the API here? I need a description. I need a account. No, I need an amount first, I think. We'll do 50. And then the account to send it to. So that should create my request. Okay, so now the request has been created. So now I should be able to like fetch my requests. So here's requests. All right. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm able to retrieve the first request, the request that I had just created, and here it is right here on the screen. But when I did that from code, so when I did that inside the actual app, I had a nasty error thrown. So it looks like something is going very wrong over here. So let's take a look at a debugger and see exactly what's happening. Oh, wrong one. Philippe, next course is going to be Ethereum. So that's what I'm working on right now. Right, this is what I'm working on right now. Philippe is essentially an app that is going to be inside the course. So if you end up taking the course, some of this might look kind of familiar, which will be fun. So here's the contract. I should be able to fetch requests. And I should be able to get the first request out of there, but it really appears that it's not working the way I expect. And specifically, we're getting an invalid opcode error, which is really concerning because I'm very much not sure. I should be seeing something over here inside my test network that says, hey, here's the transaction that just aired out, but we're definitely not seeing that, which is very unfortunate. So we're going to have to do a little bit more debugging to figure out exactly what's happening here. I think that right now what I would like to do is let's refresh this again and see if we can't find the request where it errors out. Casey, if you want to learn about Node with React, I literally have a course called Node with React. I would really recommend you check that one out. Oh, yes, okay, so sorry, Casey, you are in that course. Yes, that is the best resource I have for connecting the two. Lewis, am I using Create React App for the next course for this Ethereum one? Yes, I will be. I'm unsure right now of whether or not it is going to be like specifically a React with Ethereum course. I might end up doing just simple like jQuery stuff and server templating, not server-side rendering, just server templating, so like simple HTML templates. I haven't really decided yet because I want the course to be really about Ethereum. I don't want the course to be about React, and so that's just kind of the part that I have to figure out. So this thing is definitely appearing correctly. What is going wrong with it? Something is going wrong specifically in the browser. So only one of these requests do I actually care about. And I don't think it's this chain bundled thing right here. I don't really know what the chain bundled thing is. Huh. Well, let's see what happens. No, I don't want to comment this out just yet. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to Let's look at the request count and see if we're at least retrieving that correctly. Alex, I agree. I think React is way more realistic for actually learning about React apps. Or excuse me, learning about how these apps would actually be built and deployed. That's my real goal with the course. You know, there's a lot of Ethereum content out there right now, but it's all very basic stuff of like, hey, here's how we write a simple contract. But there's very little about, hey, how do we actually turn this into a product that we could market and sell? Like, that's the missing link. And that's like the shortcoming of Ethereum right now, right? With Ethereum itself, there's not a lot of big businesses out there that are having a lot of success by working with Ethereum. And so I want to make a course that kind of bridges the gap there and really shows people, hey, here's how we could build something that we can actually charge money for. You know, that's the goal of the course. That's what I'm hoping to do. Let's try just calling a request this time to see what happens. Philippe, you know, I had someone just ask me about that earlier today, deployment to somewhere besides Heroku. Right now, I really feel like I want to just focus on Heroku. The thing about deployment targets is that it's really tough to make everyone happy. You know, you've got some people who want to see Heroku, you've got some people who want AWS, you got some people with Google Cloud, some people with Azure Cloud. There's just a lot of different places. DigitalOcean, right? Linode, however you want to pronounce it. There's just a lot of different deployed targets out there. And so kind of want to just say like, hey, here's how we do with Heroku. And if you want to give it a shot with some other deployment location, go ahead and like give it a try. But you know, maybe I'll add in a video to the end of the course and say, hey, here's how we would deploy to AWS. But I don't really want to go back through and at every stage say like, okay, you know, for every single stage where we do deployment, here's how we do it now, here's how we do it here, here's how we do it here, and so on. And like, you know, that's a great example right there where, you know, I just listed out AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, DigitalOcean, but then, you know, you're curious about Apache in particular. So yeah, everyone has their own kind of expectation about deployment, and it's really tough to put together content that addresses all those equally. Okay, so gotta focus. When I start streaming, yesterday was the first day where I did streaming, and one thing I noticed is that my productivity went down a little bit because I don't really focus on solving these errors. So I'm going to focus for a little bit and try to figure out exactly what's going on here. So we've got an invalid opcode. Cannot quite imagine why that's the case. I actually also do not really see the request that's being created for this thing to actually fetch the whoosy whatsy. So I don't care about that WebSocket right there. I don't really see the request where we are trying to fetch the requests. Let's go back to 0 and just see what happens here. And I also want to print out a toString. Am I using something like Truffle box? I'm using Truffle. I am not using a pre-built box. I don't really care for, I tried out the Truffle boxes, but you know, the Truffle boxes are really just, the React Truffle box to be exact, they just took a create React app instance and then they ejected, they ran eject on create React app and then they customized the build just a little bit to do like, I don't know, like 1 or 2 or 3 Webpack-y things. I forget exactly what. So in this application, I created a create React app myself, and I chose not to use that box. The thing about the boxes is you never really know when they're going to change that configuration that come along with the Truffle boxes. So I decided, you know, I'd rather just figure out how to build my own boilerplate from scratch, and that's what I actually did here. So the Truffle project is actually a tiny, tiny, tiny little portion of the overall project. So here's the client app in this folder right here. So this is all React stuff. Here's the server side right here. And on the server is this tiny little folder that holds the actual Truffle application right here. And so this is the all like Ethereum related stuff. And I think that this way more closely mirrors exactly how you would put together a real application. I I think that a real app is not going to be quite so focused on Truffle as the backend. I think that you're going to see like some backend classic API server, and a small component that will be a little bit of Truffle stuff on the side. That's my real expectation. So that's what I'm playing around with right now. Okay, so we're still, gosh, I need to focus on this and figure out what the heck's going wrong. Okay, toString of undefined. I know that's defined. Why does it think that it's undefined? Any plans for subscriptions in GraphQL? The GraphQL course is getting a little bit aged right now, and I kind of feel like I'm going to revisit it soon and do some updates specifically for some of the newer versions of Apollo. That's my plan right now regarding subscriptions. So here's our debugger, excuse me. I'm gonna look at request count. 0. So that's definitely accurate. Why would this... I think I have to build a test for this darn thing. Any suggestions on how to secure a React app? You know, the big thing to keep in mind with React is, I mean, from a front-end framework standpoint, the biggest thing that you want to be aware of is cross-site scripting, which React automatically escapes everything. So when you start worrying about security with React, it's really, React is like, you can kind of depend on it to do its own thing, I think. I think it's all the pieces around it, like all the code that you write around React, that the danger comes from. So, you know, you mentioned the top 10 in particular. So, you know, where you really need to worry about is, you know, classic exploits like SQL injection, you know, stuff on the server. React itself, I don't think there's really necessarily anything special about React where there's additional security that I would care about per se. Angular 5 versus React, man, I can't tell you enough. I look at Angular every now and then, and I actually worked with Angular 1 a couple years ago. And I actually just looked at Angular 5 at the documentation like 2 weeks ago. And the same thing always strikes me about Angular. Always the same thing. With Angular, when you write an Angular app, you are learning the Angular API. Bar none. You are learning how Angular works. That knowledge doesn't translate very well to other front-end frameworks. It doesn't translate very well to a server. It doesn't translate well to other languages. With React, for the most part, we're usually writing JavaScript, like plain JavaScript code. And so all the experience you get working with a React app is, you know, traditionally logic that translates very well to other frameworks, other languages, to the server, all that kind of good stuff. So personally, I think that as an engineer, you know, if you're looking at this from optimizing your like career, fintech, you know, if that's what your goal here is, I think that going with React is the way to go, because I think it's going to give you a skill set that allows you to grow more than Angular. I've interviewed many people for software engineering positions who had backgrounds with Angular, and you know, this is not, you know, I don't like talking in absolutes, so I'm not saying like 100% of the time they were just not good or anything like that, but I noticed sometimes there was a trend with Angular candidates where they had a little bit tougher time with some more basic aspects of JavaScript that Angular takes care of. So for example, like function binding, that was something that, you know, like the context of function context, you know, the value of this, that was something that I noticed that people coming from an Angular background didn't quite always have a super strong grasp of, because at least back with Angular 1, it wasn't something you really had to worry about. So, you know, from a career perspective, that's my take. If I had to do everything again, I would still stick with React. That's me. Armend, any plans to update GraphQL course? I mentioned this just a second ago. GraphQL, the course I released You know, a decent amount of time ago, I do plan on revisiting it soon and doing a big once over and just like making sure that all the latest versions, everything work, maybe adding on something around subscriptions. That's the plan right now. Read some stuff on Stack Exchange. There might be some async issues where request count is undefined. That's funny you say that, this request count right here. I don't know, Alex, I don't know if you were specifically looking at working with like Solidity or Ethereum stuff, but that's what it kind of feels like right now. If I put a debugger in here, everything works out a-okay. But if I do a console log, I think that it's not quite working out the way I expect. Let's take another look at this. Or try starting test RPC. I'm using Truffle here, but I agree with you, Alex. I think that's the next thing I'm gonna do, because it feels like it's strange. So it looks like the request count is being defined correctly. So here's big number right here. This is request count. I think that we're gonna do a quick restart of Truffle here pretty quickly. I just want to think about this in detail one more time. So I know I've done this like 3 times now, but I keep losing focus. So we're gonna do one more debugger. I just want to verify that requests like exists here and is defined and all that kind of good stuff. Because again, I just ran this on the IDE over here, and here's requests, calling it with 0, everything is working the way I expect. So something is definitely weird right now. Something is not working the way I expect. All right, so let's, do I have request count? Yeah, toString. That's the problem. The request was not created correctly. Jeez, I really gotta focus and stop talking so much. Love talking to you guys, but I am definitely not super focused on the actual application right now. Okay, so we need to go back to the requests new right here component and figure out what's going wrong, because something is definitely going wrong when I attempt to create the new request. That's what is happening right now. So let's check that out. All right, so let's do a quick refresh. Close the app and grab a beer, Spade. Well, I've only been working this morning for 2 hours. It might be a little bit early for beer time. I don't know, maybe it's not. I think I need to put in a couple more hours before I take a break. So I'm gonna try creating a new request. Okay. Yeah, you know, that, like, hey, everything looks fine. That definitely makes me feel like it's working out correctly here. I did have a lot of trouble yesterday around this create request call right here. It was really not working the way I expect. If I look back over here, I continuously do not really see. I'm wondering if, God, do I have MetaMask set up correctly? I'm connected to the correct, oh, that's what it is. Ah, gee whiz. So here's gee whiz, man. Yeah, that's what's going wrong. So all this troubleshooting, it's all because of MetaMask over here. MetaMask is such a pain in the rear. It is actively being developed right now, very active, and so there's still a lot of things about it that just do not work the way we really would hope. Let's try this again. We're going to create a request again. So give me money. Here's where I want to send it to, and I want 1. Now let's see if we have anything from MetaMask. Okay, we have nothing from MetaMask. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Let's add back in that component and mount. We're going to console log out the request count. There we go. Just close the chat. Well, I would love to close the chat, but I love talking to all of you. That's the problem. I love talking to all of you. That's the issue here. So we just continuously are not getting the correct number of requests recorded. So that's definitely what's going wrong. Let's check our code inside the contract and see if I'm doing something just very wrong over here. I think this is it right here. We're going to change up the contract code just a little bit. We're going to do this instead. No, that can't be it though, because the Solidity browser is working correctly over here. This is working correctly right now. Let's check our code very quick. Yeah, there it is right there. Get request count. It is correctly returning 1. It really feels like when I attempt to create a request over here, it feels like this is what is going wrong. It feels like there's an error from right here. So let's examine that a little bit more and try to figure out what's happening. So now when I create a request, I'm going to try to console log what comes into the callback as opposed to just directly navigating away. Give me money. I need a account address. And I'm going to send 1 ether again. So we get back null and an empty array. So null is would be an error if one exists. So it looks like there's no error, and then v would be value that gets returned. So when we call create request, let's triple check, see what happens here. So when we call create request, we are returning nothing from this function. So nothing should be coming back, which is good. I don't really want anything coming back. Although I am also very curious as to why MetaMask, I am awfully convinced right now that this has got to be a MetaMask issue. I think we're gonna restart everything here. We're gonna restart everything. Dump it all. So something that I think if you're getting into Ethereum, this is something that is incredibly frustrating right now, is MetaMask. There's no way to like reset MetaMask internally. If you want to like essentially reset MetaMask, you actually have to remove MetaMask from Chrome and then reinstall it, which is a huge pain in the rear. Oh my goodness. It's really time consuming. Because every single time we have to go over to the Chrome store, got to do the search, add to Chrome. I'm going to add the extension. And then once we add to extension, that's not enough. We still have to add our default account to MetaMask. So let's get our key. Here's our key. We have to scroll through all this stuff. Yes, Alex, it is. It is horrible. Honestly, half the time I suspect that a lot of the issues that arise are coming from like MetaMask stuff. Sorry, wallet seed. That's the wrong one. I suspect a lot of it is coming from MetaMask stuff, but I always really wait to reset MetaMask because it's such a pain in the rear to redo it every time. All right. Fortunately, I've gotten really fast at doing it because I have to do it so often. 9545. So localhost 9545 is my test Ethereum network. Okay, so now we should be able to go back to our root route. I want the keys reset. So that's the benefit of using Truffle develop. So Truffle, this is a very recent addition. Alex, it sounds like you're pretty savvy with Ethereum stuff. Truffle released this feature maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. So Truffle develop right here will start up a local account with, yeah, okay, you got it. Yeah, so these are, they call it a deterministic account because you always get the same mnemonic and you always get the same accounts created. And they're all initiated with 100 Ethereum. So I can, now when you restart the network, any transactions that you have created are wiped away. So you are not, every time you restart the Truffle server, it's like starting all over. And that's actually this cause of another concern because MetaMask numbers all of its transactions. And anytime you send a transaction with MetaMask, it's going to advance the transaction count by 1. So if I make a transaction right now, here I'll do it right now. So if I do minimum contribution 100, I think we need to do a quick refresh here. Oh, I didn't start up the server. Okay, so now we're listening. So create contract. So here's MetaMask. Submit. So now MetaMask is referring to that as transaction number 0. If I now restart my server, if I restart my Truffle develop, or the local Ethereum network, the local network's transaction count is going to be reset down to nil, right? But if I then use MetaMask again, the transaction number will go up to 1, and I'll be off by 1 essentially. MetaMask thinks that the next transaction should have an ID of 1, but the network will think that I should be creating my first transaction, which should have a transaction number of 0, and that mismatch leads to an error. So not only anytime that you want to reset MetaMask, you have to restart it, or reinstall it, but also anytime you restart your Truffle network, you also have to reinstall MetaMask as well. That's a known issue that has just not yet been addressed. Really unfortunate. Okay, let's get back to this. So we're going to try creating a request again. It's my address, create request. Man, why something is just so off right now. So when I create the request right here, it really should be saying, popping up the MetaMask notification, because I am trying to spend money here when I call create request. This is not a GET call. This is trying to modify my contract, and that costs Ethereum. Public restricted, that's correct. Only the owner can change it. It works inside of the Solidity browser. What could be going wrong here? Let's check out this. I don't care about that. Let's clean up some console logs here. Help me think for a little bit. Actually, no, I want to keep this one around for just a moment. Let's do request new. So we got our instance to our contract. We call create request, and we are specifically attempting to call it. Let's try this instead. Different way of calling it. Okay, so now MetaMask pops up. So this is what we had wanted. That's the distinction between calling. So you see this create request.call right here. .call is not the same as the classic call that we are used to with JavaScript functions. So this is not like call or apply. This is I want to specifically call it, I guess. I guess we don't want it for whatever reason, even though the Truffle documentation says that you do. Okay, well, that's that. So now that that is fixed, we should be able to go back over to our contract page and see what our request status is. Okay, list of requests, 1. So I now have 1 request here, thank goodness. So we're going to uncomment this, request, render requests, request.map. Okay, this looks good. So let's try this out now. Okay, so now here's a LI right here that represents the request. I think I need to see what is contained within that request to understand. Oh, nope, don't run that. I want to put it inside. There we go. So we're going to look at the request itself and figure out exactly what's going on. All right. Okay, interesting. So when data comes back from my contract, a request up here, here's the request. This is a struct, and we think of a struct as being like a JavaScript object with key value pairs. But when you pull information from Solidity or from this contract, from this request struct right here, you don't actually get an object back, you get an array. and the array contains these values in this order right here. So the first element is the description, second is the amount, then recipient, then the approval count, and then complete. So we should be able to go back over here and we'll see the first element is the description, the amount, the target account, the number of contributors, and then whether or not the contract has been completed. So essentially we need to destructure all these things off right here and print them out inside this li. That's our goal right now. So let's go back over to contracts request list. Yeah, right here, request list. So we'll do some destructuring. We've got description. What do we want to call the next one? Amount, address. Let's see, contributors is actually supposed to be our approval count. We'll call it that, exactly. Let's call recipient like so. We'll stick with common terminology and then complete. Yeah, that looks good. And that's all coming from the request array, like so. So now, inside of key, we need a key here. And it's going to be a rather big li, so we're going to multi-line it, I think. I could really use some like CSS framework here to help with the styling. I think I'll come back through and add that in shortly. But for right now, I really just want to kind of get some content on the screen. So let's add in, I think we'll place each of these inside of a div just to make sure that it's all printing up correctly. Description, amount, recipient, approval count. These are not request anymore. It's my mistake. It should be just description, amount, recipient, approval count. Complete, like so. Oh, that's nasty. Objects, okay, so if anyone was here watching stream yesterday, really interesting thing is that anytime we pull a number out of our Ethereum contract, all numbers are not like actual numbers. They're all instances of a library called BigNumber.js. So amount right here, it represents a number, but it's actually an object that like represents the number. And the reason for that is that quite famously, React does not handle very large numbers very well. So if I do like that -1, I still get back the same number. And so that's why anytime we're working with numbers with Ethereum, we're always working with the big number library, even if it's a very small number. So to print them to actually like print them out, we call toString. That takes a number and it converts it to a string, which is, obviously you can't do numerical operations on, but it at least gives you something that you can display on the screen. And that's what my goal was right now. So this looks good. I got a floating console log. Here it is. Take care of that. Okay, so I'm now able to print out a list of all the different requests that have been issued against this contract. Again, this is all about crowdfunding. The owner of the crowdfunding campaign has to, oh, and I've got a little typo here. The owner of the crowdfunding campaign has to make these requests to like try to withdraw money from the campaign. And so that's what we're printing out right here. So this is the first request they make. They're saying like, give me money. I want to send this money, this many way to this recipient right here. And this is the number of contributors who have actually approved that request to send money. So let's fix up this thing. So complete, this is actually a Boolean that is not going to print out correctly. So we'll do a ternary here. Like so, that should be better. All right, so that's much better. Looks good. I like it. Let's see, what's the next thing we have to do? Next thing we have to do is, I'm not fetching the list of all requests right now. I'm only fetching the first request right here. So I have to pull out everything from 0 to request count -1. Again, I don't really want to do a for loop for this. I would way rather do a like something a little bit more clever. I don't know if I have Lodash in here. Oh, with Lodash we can't do async await with Lodash, so that's out. Now we're gonna use Lodash. Let's make sure we actually have Lodash though. I don't. We'll just do a for loop. Heck with it. Request count right here is actually a big number as well. I can't really use a. We'll do a let. How about that? Make life easy. So let request count. String it, and we want to pull an integer out of there, like so. And we'll subtract 1. All right, I think that looks better. So, nope, it doesn't look better at all. Oh, gee whiz, this is gonna lock up my browser because I saved the file. That's what we want. Oh, please tell me you didn't. Okay, I think we're still okay. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, this looks good. So now if I make another request, I should see it listed on here as well. So this one will do replace 0 with request count. Yep, thank you very much. Oh, got the reload. Pay a vendor, and this time I'm requesting 2 Ether. Creating the request costs money, so we'll submit that. So we get give me money, so there's something going wrong with our logic inside of here, which is fine. Console log out the request. Ah, there we go. Much better. Okay, and you know what? Why would that have happened? Why would we have not immediately seen the request pop up? That's kind of a problem. We really should have seen the request appear immediately. Let's try making another one and seeing what happened. More money. Yeah, so we're being redirected over here too soon. Because I only have 2 requests appearing right here, but if I now refresh, we see 3 requests appearing. Why would that occur? So here's request new. We should only be trying to navigate back over to that other screen after the request has been successfully completed. That's the purpose of this callback right here. I'm going to have to call them back to that for a second because I'm really not sure off the top of my head right now why that would occur. Okay, so back on topic, I at least have the ability to create requests here. Now the next thing I need to do is make sure that I have the ability to approve requests if I am a contributor. So inside of the printout for the request right here, I need to add in some buttons that say approve or deny. So we'll add on 2 more divs for right now. Again, we're gonna do a big styling pass on this in a little bit to make it look way better. There is no, I don't need a deny button. excuse me, there is no such thing as approve. There is a finalize. And these are actually just supposed to be buttons. Component, because it's in component did mount and it's not unmounting. Yeah, that's great insight, Dimitri. Unfortunately, let's see, where are we? Request list, here we go, right here. Unfortunately, request list right here, this component is more or less, it's a child of the component that we are navigating over to. So it definitely is, in fact, getting remounted. So it had been unmounted, it is getting remounted, which means we should be pulling up the new list of contracts. But that's a really good thought, Dimitri, and I think I'll follow up on that in just a moment to verify that is the case. So I need on approve and on finalize. Okay, so here we need to, I'm attempting to approve this thing. So let's see if we can get a good example of what this will look like. Well, let's check out our Solidity contract first, running over here. So I'm trying to approve a request, and I need to pass in the ID of the request that I'm trying to approve at this point in time. And I don't really have that information available to me. It's kind of available, but not terribly easy. Technically it's I right here, but that's, so whatever, we'll do it. So that's the ID. Okay. This process.contract.approve ID, and then we'll give it a callback. And we'll just console log out this stuff and see what we're getting from it. And then we'll try to finalize as well. Now finalize, I really expect to throw an error here because there's nothing to say that we can't try to withdraw more money than our contract contains at any given time. So we'll see what happens there. So finalize approval, my mistake. Finalize approval and approve request, not just approve. Approve request like size, or excuse me, like so. All right, let's try this out now. See how we're doing. Looks like we got some typos. Oh yeah, so these are both getting called with ID now. Line 39, ID. All right, so now I have the ability to do these. That's great. I don't have enough money inside of the contract yet to actually fund these things. Now the first thing I would like to do is to reformat these from way. That's the unit of measurement here. These are way. I want to convert it over to ether just to make them a little bit more legible. I think that's definitely the first thing I want to do. So we're doing a toString here. We need to do a toEther, and I would like to just, yeah, here we go. Nope, not that. Where am I printing stuff up here? I don't want to rewrite this code. Right here. Amount toString. Like so. And we need to import way3, or web3, excuse me. All right, so now we are asking for 5 ether, 2 ether, 1 ether. Our crowdfunding request, however, only has 0 ethers assigned to it right now, so we need to contribute some amount of money to it. So I'm going to contribute 10 ether. So we'll contribute, submit. So I have now added my contribution. The refresh of the contract isn't quite working right now. Again, that's another thing I need to work on. So now there are 10 ethers belonging to the contract. So in theory, if I now approve, that should disperse 5 Ether from the contract to this recipient right here. And again, we're pretending that this recipient right here is like some vendor who is helping me complete my crowdfunding campaign. Like they're doing some service for me, or they are, I don't know, something or other. Can we import? No. I don't really know how to get MetaMask to display values for this person right here, but we can probably use the terminal. So this is the running Ethereum network that I have right now. Do web3.eth.get balance, balance for this person, toString. Okay, so right now they have 100 Ethereum. So if I approve and then finalize, that should deduct 5 ethers from the contract, and it should give this person right here, this address, an additional 5 ethers. So let's try this out. We're going to approve it, and we get an error message. Okay, well, I gotta start somewhere. So that's gonna be inside of request list on approve right here. It says that I called it with an inappropriate number of arguments. Approve request, it thinks I called it the inappropriate number of arguments, even though I definitely called it with the correct number. Approve request takes 1 argument. Let's not worry about the callback function right now, because I think that's probably what's causing the issue. And I'm gonna clean up this one over here as well for right now. So we're just going to try to like get the contract done. We don't really need the console logs at present. So I'm going to approve. Nope. Invalid address. Why would we have an invalid address here? Contract approve request. Got to look at the contract definition again. Get a reminder of what that thing does. Approve request. I think I might have to define, no, that can't be it. I'm definitely not getting any feedback from the terminal. Let's take a look at this again. So what address is this thing trying to format right now? That's my question. Let's look at the input transaction formatter. I think it expects a from here. I need to actually like list out where it's coming from. Alex, only the owner of the contract, the person who in theory is like running the crowdfunding campaign, only the owner can create requests and finalize requests. However, only contributors can approve. Right now, I, as the owner can also be a contributor. I don't have any rules against that. So right now, with just one account, I can both approve and finalize. Right now, I'm the only contributor, so I can approve and I can do the entire flow myself. If there was any other person who had contributed money to this campaign, well, that's where the community record keeping comes into play. That's when it starts to turn into a real community effort where the other contributors want to have some reasonable assurance that the money they are contributing is actually being spent in a honest fashion, and sending it to actual causes that are going to advance the crowdfunding campaign. That's the goal right now. So again, we got an invalid address here. I think I need to, just to make sure that when I call approve request right here, I need to specify the source account. I want to look at another example of this where I create, let's see, contribute. Yeah, I think I just need to specify from. So we're going to do a web3 f accounts at 0, like so. Nope. There we go. All right, I think it's probably better now. So let's give this a shot. And Alex, I don't have any rules right now on creating more requests than money available. That is by design. If I try to approve more requests than exist, when I try to finalize the request, when I try to actually disperse the money or send it out, that will just fail, and that is kind of by design. I want to have the ability to create more requests or try to send out more money than has been pledged, because in the context of crowdfunding, you might want to be hey, look, we can make this campaign happen, we can build this product, but we need this much money, and here are the reasons that we need that much money. And maybe we would want to have the ability to spell out all these different requests in great detail, so it's really clear exactly why we are trying to collect like $1 million. The other thing that might be a little mysterious is the reasoning behind the finalize button here. The finalize button here is to you can finalize once finalize is clicked. Once we run that, that's when this amount of money gets sent to this actual recipient right here. The reasoning behind finalize is that I don't want to allow a request to be like executed until the owner says like it is time to actually send the money. To give you some context of why that's the case, maybe the description for this request, well, actually this is a better one right here. So pay a vendor. Maybe I would want to create the request for this very quickly or very soon, but maybe the vendor is going to take like 1 year to complete their work. So I don't want to send that vendor the money until everything is like they have completed their work and it's all done. So that means that what I'm trying to say here is I am not just going to disperse the money once the contract has been gotten enough approvals, or excuse me, disperse the request or complete the request once it's gotten enough approvals. I want to make sure that the owner of the contract or owner of the campaign has the ability to actually verify and say, yes, the vendor completed their work. We are now ready to finalize. So the approvals and finalize are kind of like two separate events in time. Okay, anyways, back to this. I think that we're ready to test this out. So let's try approving. Yay, it's working. So this is going to approve this particular request. So now the approval count should go up to 1. If I refresh, I should see 1 approval, please. Yay, it's right here. It's out of order, which is really disconcerting. It's out of order. That feels not very good. Did I click on the last one? Maybe I clicked on the last one. Okay, well, we're going to figure that out in just a moment. Oh, this is going to be interesting. All right, well, anyways, we'll figure that out in a moment. Let's try finalizing now and see what happens. So I'm going to finalize. And I'm running into this gas issue again. I ran into this yesterday. Okay, so now we fail. Base fee exceeds gas limit. Let's finalize again. Now we're running into these gas issues. I ran into this yesterday with MetaMask, and I eventually had to just reinstall MetaMask again to actually make it happen. Let's try finalizing another one. Okay, so that will let me finalize, so that's problematic. Okay, so it looks like there is a ordering issue here. Without a doubt, there's a big ordering issue. I think I know why that is occurring. When I manipulated the first request, it was actually changing out the third one right here. The reason for that is I think the way that I put together the loop right here. Yeah, because we're counting down from request count. Yeah, so we're doing this incorrectly. I don't want to push into requests. I actually want to, the way that I'm handling these IDs right now is really bad. This is something that needs some refactoring. Rather than doing a push, I want to insert into the start of the array, I think. I think that's going to fix the issue. Yeah, so let's do a, let's try this out and see what happens. Okay, so now we've got this first one on top. Let's try manipulating the third one now. So we have 9 ethers. We're trying to spend 5 here. We'll hit approve. Okay, so that appears to have approved it. Okay, so now I've got an approval count of 1, and if I want to disperse, I can click finalize here. So I should see pledged go down to 4. So let's refresh now. So pledge goes down to 4. Contract, or excuse me, a request gets marked as complete. And if I go back over and look at the balance, I now see correctly 106 ethers in this like target account over here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think this is working. Believe it or not, I think that's like the entire functionality of the app. I think the only thing they have to do now is like a lot of styling and CSS and some better like error handling probably. I also need to update the requests after they've been approved or finalized and some other good stuff like that. So I think that's what we're going to move on to now. So that'll be fun. I also need to refactor all this like request count stuff because this is definitely really not working out the way I would want it to. I think ideally I think that we're gonna push this, but we're gonna like specifically mark like that. So now the first index request count now is going to like function as the. It's still super unclear. That is super unclear. That is not at all appropriate. But it's better than what I had before. So now it's going to be a little bit something like this. Let's try this now and just verify. Alex, I agree with you completely. The more that I use React for this stuff, it very much feels way more relevant than doing templating. It's just a difficulty thing, I guess. There's been more than one course where I have not really wanted to focus on React, and I've really wanted to like just cover the other topic and not bring in React. This is the first time where I'm seriously thinking to myself like, I kind of don't want to include React. It is so, without a doubt, it's the best way to do it. But it's just so much added complexity on top of all the, like, if you're trying to learn Ethereum and you don't know React very well, it would just, I'm pretty convinced it would make life challenging. I guess that's my hang up right now. I don't know. My goal right now is to do the entire React app, and then I'm going to rebuild it with HTML templating, and then look at the two code bases and say, okay, which one, like, is the React stuff really that much harder than just the HTML templating? And then the other option would be to maybe show how to show how both of them are built inside the course. You know, that would be the other option as well. I could just show, hey, here's how we do it with React, and here's how we do it with HTML templating, and then that makes everyone happy. You know, if you want to learn about this stuff with React, there you go. But if you don't care about React and you don't want to learn React, then you don't have to, and you could just watch the server templating stuff. Bill, yes, I am. This is one of the apps that you'll see inside the course. It'll look a lot better inside the course, don't worry. It's going to look a lot better in the course visually. But yes, it will be a course about Ethereum and Solidity and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so what do we want to work on now? I think that we need to make sure that these requests like update themselves. I think that's probably important. Getting the request to update after we approve this thing is where, you know, I'm only using React right now. Now, Alex, where I'm really drawing the line here is no Redux. That is for sure, you know, without a doubt, can't have Redux because that is way too much complexity. Unfortunately, Redux really at the end of the day would make a lot of the code way more clear. However, I think that in the context of a course, I can't assume that people are going to come into this wanting to learn Ethereum having already had knowledge about Redux or knowing how Redux works. So unfortunately, that's really where I have to draw the line. And unfortunately, this next thing that I have to do would be so much easier if I was making use of Redux. It would also be a lot easier with HTML templating as well, because basically what I have to do is take this load contract function right here. Let's draw out the component hierarchy really quick, just so I can even organize my own thoughts. All right, so what do we have? We've got, let's just delete this stuff. Let's look at app. No, not app, we want index. we go. Okay, so we've got what do we got? Request list, contracts list. No, contracts show. It's not even detailed show. Contracts show. Man, good thing I'm making this diagram because even I don't remember my component names. And this shows request lists. Request list, like so. Okay, so now what's happening is the request list component is showing, or is like basically updating the contract. So now contract show needs to essentially refetch the contract and re-render itself. So I think what we have to do is pass a callback from contract show down into request list. And anytime request list updates the contract, it needs to call that callback to reload the contract. I think that's exactly what we're going to do. So we need to find this component right here. Here's request list. We're going to pass in on contract change, and this will call this dot load contract. Yeah, I need to bind this. So now inside of request list, again, this is something that really should be done with Redux. And oh man, even the component did mount is not going to function correctly here. Ugh, this is not good. So we probably don't even have to do this. We can just pass in the callback directly. Yeah, that's better. All right. I don't think this is actually going to have any desired effect, but we'll give it a shot anyways. Okay, so we now need to make a new request. We're going to try to give this money to the same person again. Paint vendor this time, why not? Submit. Okay, so again, outstanding issue is we don't see the request immediately appear on the screen. That's something that has to be fixed. Here's the paint vendor request. We're going to first approve it. All right, now here we go. So we've got invalid number of arguments to solidity function. So this is probably going to be due to this these callbacks that I'm adding in right here. Why is it complaining about that though? Let's look at like I've got other instances where I'm passing in a callback and there's absolutely no issue. So this is approve request and finalize approval right here. These are being provided by Web3. Is it Web3 or is it? Yeah, it's Web3. And they really don't appear to be working the way that I wish many times. Let's try that. Let's approve. Approval count 1, that looks good. So now we should be able to do the same thing. Like, why are we using a promise here but not in the other location? I do not know. So we'll finalize this thing. Now when we click finalize, we should see pledge automatically update. After the MetaMask approval, of course. Yeah, there we go. So pledge went down to 1 Ether, so that's looking pretty good. Unfortunately, the request itself did not update. So if we now refresh, we'll see complete go to yes, like so. Oh. Yeah, this is something just so Redux would make this so much easier than what we're going to have to do here. It's really a shame. Is the request a promise as well? You know, Alex, that's a great question. So one thing that's really awkward here is, again, this is a function that's being provided by Web3, which is a library for working with Ethereum. Right now I'm using version 0.2, but version 1 is in active development. Version 1 works all around promises. Version 0.2 works largely around callbacks. I have not really detected rhyme or reason right now. Like, this is obviously returning a promise because I'm chaining on the .then right here. This is calling a method on the contract. But if I look over here, here's where I'm calling a method on the contract as well. And this is using a callback. So it doesn't really seem to be rhyme or reason right now as to when it's a promise and when it is callback based. I have not, because these are like identical things that I'm doing between these two statements right here. Like contract approve request, contract create request. One worked with a callback, and I think this one actually specifically did not work with a promise. This one over here is only working with a promise. It's just something I have not yet really figured out why it's working one way but not the other. The issue that I'm running into right now is, I've said several times now, gee, I really wish I had Redux to work with. I'm not sure this is really going to work out with just React by itself. I think it's going to get way too confusing. I'm just going to make it work with React, and then I'll make a decision on what the best way to go is. So let's see. This is no longer good. This is going to be like load requests. Because basically what I want to have happen now is make sure that when the component first mounts, we attempt to render all the requests. But I also want to make sure that if we update, we should also do that as well. Can I request that after you do the browser push, check the number of requests that exist before you start looping? Like request count right here? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Help me understand. We'll receive props. I before E, except after C. There we go. Well, we'll just, if we don't have any requests, we won't enter the while loop. We won't attempt to, oh, wait. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if I create a new contract right now, I think this thing's going to break. Oh, wait, no. It'll work. Because if we have so request count, yeah, I want greater than or equal to 0, because when I get my request count right here, this is the total number of requests, but it's like 0 indexed. So I subtract 1 right away. So if we have no requests, we're going to subtract 1 from 0. We'll have -1, and we'll never enter the while loop. So I think we'll be okay in that case. Again, I'm not super happy with this code right here, so I will probably revisit this and think of a better way of handling it. But it seems odd that the browser is pushed before the request is created, thus requiring refresh. Oh, yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yes, I completely agree with you. Okay. I'm coming around. I'm seeing what you're saying. You're saying let's retrieve the number of requests before we attempt to navigate over. I see. I got it. Okay. Ideally, I think that what you're suggesting is the best way to do that, now that you mention it. I think that's probably what I will end up doing, because I just realized when we are in request new, right here, and we create the new request, when we call the callback right here, you're totally correct. The callback is going to be executed when the, let's forget the word request right here for a second, when the request or the transaction has been submitted, that's when this callback is executed. The callback is executed on transaction submittal, not on completion. So we would have to like confirm it. Another way to address this, and you know what, the best way to address it would be, is if we were using Redux. If we were using Redux, we could add in some like fake request record. Like we could make some fake request object that is marked specifically as pending, because ideally we don't want the user to have to like, in production, it could take up to like 15 minutes for this transaction to be confirmed. And we wouldn't want the user to be sitting over on that form just waiting. What would be much better is if we could immediately kick the user back over here and they saw something that said like, hey, this request is pending like submittal. So ideally we would kick the user right back over, but we would make like a fake request to add on here that says like, you know, we have to wait for blockchain confirmation on this thing. And so maybe, and then we could address that with styling of like, you know, gray it out a little bit. And then once it actually did hit, that's when we would like firm up the color, so to speak. Yeah, you're totally right. That is definitely the way to do it. And doing this is like, oh man, this would be such a pain with React. This is really where Redux would make this so much more easy. So we could just make a separate reducer of like pending transactions. Because right now with React, I would have to, you know, it would be not impossible with React, but it would be so over the top confusing to add in like the idea of a fake request. Ugh. So this is why I have to build out all this stuff ahead of time for all these courses in great detail to like discover these little issues. Trust me, all the apps and all the courses, they are like, you know, I spend a decent amount of time to really smooth them out and make sure that it's really clear what's going on. And it's exactly issues like this that I get to address from the get-go, as opposed to, you know, have us come up with some complicated solution to work with. That's part of the big challenges in making the course. When you have to teach it to yourself, you know, I've never really said this to anyone, but you know, when I meet people in real life, they often say like, oh, hey, what do you do for, you know, a living, or, you know, whatever. And rather than saying like, oh, I make courses, or I do contract work, you know, software engineering, like, you know, contract web development, which is what I do a lot of as well. What I frequently want to say is, oh, I'm just like a professional learner. I'm just good at teaching myself stuff. And that's you know, that's really what my job is. My job is really to absorb a ton of stuff myself and then figure out some way to present it to everyone else in some really palatable fashion. Okay. Alex, you gotta, when I release this course, you gotta email me and ask me for a free coupon code, because you just helped me stumble. You just helped save me so much time in realizing the issue with the refresh of transactions. I'm telling you right now, you're gonna need a free copy of this course. When it's released, you gotta send me an email, just mention YouTube stream, and I'll get you a free copy of it, and you'll be able to see how we ended up here. Okay, so let's think about solutions here. So what are our big issues right now? So big issues right now. Let's create a new request. No. Let's make a new request and approve and finalize it, because I think that should be working correctly. So let's at least confirm that. So here's our account. Coffee mug. Okay, so now we've got to do the refresh. I think that we need to approve. So now when I approve this, my expectation is, my hope, I should say. So when I approve, let's look at the code for request list. So here's request list. On approve, I should be calling on contract change. which should be attempting to like refetch the entire contract and re-render it on the screen. I don't know that it's actually going to update approval account. Well, let's just click it and see what happens. Oh, you know what? I think we're going to run into the same exact thing that just happened, where it, no, okay, it worked here. Shoot. Let's finalize now and see what happens. It failed, but for a good reason. It failed because we didn't actually have enough money. So 1 ether, we're attempting to send 1 ether to this address right here, but the contract itself only contains 1 ether. So something that's super misleading about Ethereum, or maybe not misleading, but something to always keep in mind is that with every transaction, you have to spend ether to just process the transaction. So even though it looks like, well, I'm trying to spend 1 right here and I have 1, it's really, you're trying to spend 1 plus the gas price, or the price to actually process the transaction. So I think this might work right now, but I need to add in additional, I need to pledge additional money, and then I think it might work the way I expect. So let's contribute just 1 more. Let's refresh. We should see 2 ethers pledged, hopefully. Oh no, it did spend it successfully. I think it did spend it successfully, because otherwise I should have added in 2 ether. Let's add in 2 ether now. All right, let's finalize. Oh, wait, look at that. It's marked as complete. Okay, it did work. It just, approval did like a live update, right? So this error message is okay because I just denied the thing. So approval account got automatically updated. Complete did not. Oh, fantastic. Let's test this one more time just to see, make sure it's like 100% reproducible. So we're going to do, I don't know, paper, whatever. I'm going to send 1 ether. All right, let's do the refresh. Okay, so here's paper. We're trying to send 1. We have 0 approval count. Let's approve. Submit. And we are definitely not getting any live update, but if we refresh, we should see 1. If we finalize, I think we're not going to see the update. Oh, why are you complaining about, I get this like repetitive message about gas, and I don't yet understand why MetaMask will sometimes. Look at that right there. So there's like a pending transaction. I feel like there's a pending transaction. Yeah, look at this. So we've got some pending transaction. Let's reject this. We're gonna have to start, refresh again. Yeah, MetaMask is extremely unreliable, and I would really, really like to somehow not have to make use of it, but okay, so we've got approval count 1. We'll finalize. Now this time, we've still got a gas limit of 0 here, which, yeah, it's just not. Base fee exceeds gas limit. Base fee exceeds gas limit. Let's finalize. I was just seeing this error message a moment ago, and I don't recall what the reason for it was. Invalid opcode, which means that we probably didn't put enough gas in. I don't really don't understand why sometimes we're seeing these gas limit errors and sometimes we don't. Okay, and again, we're not seeing any gas limit error. I need to like copy paste down the gas limits that were being provided here. Why would we be getting that? Shoot. Let's see if we can't like figure out what the gas limit is on the fly here from the console. So let's look at the Web3 JS documentation. Estimate gas. I think maybe we should do that just to get an estimate and kind of put us in the ballpark. I feel like I have read several times where it appears that people are, I don't know, I think specifically with Truffle develop, with this chain that I'm running right here, this client-side one, I believe I have read a support thread talking about how like sometimes gas just randomly starts to begin behaving very strangely. And I kind of want to confirm that right now. So we're going to restart. We're going to redo MetaMask for the 4th time, I think, this morning. And we're going to restart our server test network as well. Because I do want to see if this is something related to the Truffle side of things. I have, I spent a ton of time. So Truffle right here gives us this very easy to work with network. That automatically generates these accounts and funds them for us automatically, which is really great. But it's lacking in some regards. Like it doesn't feel like it's super stable. We can't pass a lot of options to it. Just a lot of stuff seems a little bit weird about that test network. And so I did spend a lot of time to figure out a way of like an easy way of starting up a local network with Geth instead. And I do have a script for that, but I would like to use Truffle because it's going to be a lot easier for people in the course to really understand what's going on. But just the more I work with this, the more I think that I kind of want to eventually use Geth rather than Truffle. I think if Truffle keeps on giving me a lot of grief here, I think we might end up swapping over to Geth. The other thing that's interesting is Truffle currently does not support like WebSockets that Truffle develop. It technically does. Like Truffle develop uses Geth, but it doesn't allow you to input any options of your own. So we need to restart our server as well because that thing doesn't, that contract doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so we're good there. So now we have no open campaigns. We're gonna go to new, minimum contribution of 100. Oh, and now, we don't have a account hooked up to MetaMask. Ethereum JS test RPC. So test RPC I would love to use, but it does not have support for, here's, man, learn this Ethereum stuff just as much as learning the underlying concepts. It's all about learning about the ecosystem and really like the limitations of all these different components we have to work with. So here's the deal. Here's where all this stuff is at right now. Like I said just a moment ago, Web3 JS, which is like represents our portal to any Ethereum chain. Web3 JS has version 0.2 and version 1. Version 1 doesn't support events over HTTP. Events are essentially our ability to kind of like watch a contract and get a notification of whenever a contract emits an event. And so if you're trying to build any like live, updating, interesting application, you really want to use events. However, between version 0.2 and 1, we don't have the ability to watch for events over HTTP anymore. Okay, so suffice it to say, if that doesn't make a lot of sense, suffice to say, between version 0.2 and version 1, there's a big breaking change of Web3. Now, the reason that's a big deal is that TestRPC does not yet have support for WebSockets. Just not there, period, not there. And I don't know that there are plans to add it, but there's like no progress. So it could still be a ways off that we'll get support for WebSockets. And so what that means is we can't use TestRPC with Web3 version 1. We can use TestRPC with Web3 version 0.2. But, you know, in the context of building a course like this, I need to have like reasonable assurance that, you know, things aren't going to break instantly. So I don't want to put out a version that's only going to ever work with version 0.2 of Web3. So that's the big difficulty here. Now, the reason I spent a lot of time working with trying to get like Geth up and working outside of Truffle, I just did this. There we go. The reason I want to get Geth working instead of Truffle is that with Geth we can turn on support for like WebSockets. Geth has support for WebSockets. Truffle uses Geth, but it doesn't allow you currently to turn on those WebSockets. So in other words, the very forward-looking solution here, like the solution that's going to work for a long time to come and not break anytime soon, would be to make sure that we support Web3 version 1. And if we want to support Web3 version 1, then we need to build everything with some test network that has support for WebSockets. And TestRPC does not. That's the crux there of everything. And Geth, or excuse me, Truffle right now, Truffle Develop also does not support WebSockets either. But it can, because it uses Geth. They just haven't exposed the ability to supply options from the Truffle Develop command that get forwarded onto Geth. So if it sounds like this is all a headache, it's, well, you know, it's because it kind of is. That's life, though. One thing I said on stream yesterday was that, you know, all this Ethereum stuff is really hard right now, but the benefit to that is that if you understand it and you find like some contract position or, you know, a job working with Ethereum, you'd be so valuable because so few people really understand how all this stuff is working together right now. So I think that's the exciting part about a course is it's challenging, but like if you can figure out what's going on, it's going to make life really easy. Or not easy, but like life good, I guess. You want the first and the second account here because we're going to create a new request. Coffee. All right. So if you recall, the reason I just reset MetaMask and do all this stuff was because Approve and Finalize was like really not working appropriately. And so now if I start to go through the flow with everything restarted, you're going to notice, oh, wait a minute, no, Finalize is still not behaving the way we expect. So it looks like there's still something a little bit weird here that needs a little bit of debugging. Okay, you'll notice that we have 2 pending transactions now, so let's reject both of them. And we'll start over. So we'll contribute again. We're going to submit. There we go. And we're going to finalize. Okay, so now, like out of nowhere, when I try to finalize, I'm now getting a correct gas price, or gas limit, excuse me, where I was not before. I don't understand why I was not before, but now am. Gonna have to like think about it for a little bit. First live stream about making a course. Yeah, might be. I was thinking about stream. So this right here is me streaming, just like building the apps that will be in the course. I was thinking about streaming the actual course creation process. So like actually streaming me recording the videos as well. So if you wanted to, you would not even have to buy the course. You could just like watch the stream. But then the downside of that is that the, you know, on a stream, whenever I record a course, like all the videos for it, I do make some number of mistakes, and so I do have to sometimes record videos. So that would be the downside to the stream. Like you'd be getting it kind of for free, but at the same time it'd be not quite as like buttoned up and everything as just watching the course on Udemy or whatever else. I don't know if I'm going to stream the actual recording. We'll see. Okay, so it looks like, you know, Approve and Finalize work well enough, but the entire process here of getting these like live updates really just doesn't feel solid at all. Like it's not in a good spot. So I think that I need to like pause here and make a decision about exactly how we're gonna work with this. I feel like what I want to do right now is pull in a really slow network, like make use of a very slow network and see how a slow network, like not a local one, how responsive some of these updates are with a slow network, and then decide whether or not I have to build in a lot of functionality to the React app to kind of like compensate for these in-between states, like where we go from submittal of a transaction to like transaction being finalized. Is there a key of pending transactions that you can give to the React front end from Web3? That's a great question. Let's look at the Web3 documentation and try to figure out like what ability we have to fetch like pending transactions. I feel like the easiest way to approach this would be to just hook up to a slower network that doesn't instantly process everything, and then if it is a deal, then come back to Web3 and see if there is some like workaround over there. I think that might be the way to go. So I think that right now I want to find a very slow network to work with. So the easiest way of doing that might be to just start up the local Geth node. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way of doing this. I think I'm probably just going to do that. I think that'll make life easiest. What do we want to do? The other option would be to make use of one of the test networks, but I don't know how. So, here's our choice of networks. So here's the main Ethereum network where like things actually cost money, and then we've got Ropsten right here as the test network. The thing is, I don't know how quickly Ropsten actually processes transactions. Maybe we could probably just look that up. Yeah, unfortunately this is still like the blocks over here. 9 seconds, 16, 9, 22. Like the test network is still really fast, and I kind of want something even slower than that, something that's like predictably slow. I think that I'm just gonna have to start up Geth and do things that way. I think that's gonna make life easier, or that's gonna be just the easiest approach. So what are we gonna do here? I've got some scripts put together for starting up Geth somewhere around here. Where'd they go? Here it is. Yep. So I think we're going to add Geth to this like Geth stuff to the server side. Not super appropriate, so probably be another place to refactor. So here's my Geth startup script. Sure, Alex. Yeah. Hey, you big help. Really appreciate your insight on some of these things. Thanks for sticking around. I'll catch you later. Crowdfund. I am actually going to take lunch myself. You know what? Actually, Alex, I'm going to join you. I think it's lunchtime. We're going to take a lunch break here. Rplay, if you're still around, I apologize, but I think it is lunchtime, so I think I'm going to go grab a snack and come back in like 30 minutes to an hour or something. So I will catch you guys probably sometime this afternoon. May or may not stream this afternoon. We'll see. So again, thanks guys, and I'll catch you guys later.